Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Hope your week is off to a good start and that you had a nice Monday. It is Tuesday, and we're rolling right along here. Last week of August, episode number 112 on Rounding the Bases Live. I spent a lot of time yesterday with the great Alan Landever of KCAV, just tweaking some of the lighting. Feels like it's we're just constantly working on this, trying to make this better. Come a long ways from being stuck back in a walk-in closet with that dark black backdrop, and so continuing to work on this, using it from home for baseball as well. So if you have any audio visual needs, and those that are much larger than this, check them out. Kansas City Audiovisual, KCAV.com. I want to get right to my guest today. If in the midst of this pandemic, you were one of those people that said to me, "Hey, God, you seem like you're everywhere," that's because, like my guest today, I was just trying to do everything that I could to almost outrace and outrun this pandemic, which from a health standpoint is probably impossible. But from a work standpoint, I've said it before, there were a lot of us in baseball, from an announcing standpoint, and other sports for that matter too, that were out of work. And I've said that over and over again, not as a, feel bad for Joel or feel bad for this person, but really just more of a, hey, you may see us on TV and we do have the greatest jobs in the world, but many of us get paid by the game. And so we were in the same boat as so many others. And like my guest today, I've got other business interests besides just baseball. And so my guest has a family business. He is also my co-host on the pandemic creation known as the Big Fly Baseball Show, and he's even woken up early for us today. Victor Rojas is the play-by-play announcer for the Los Angeles Angels on TV, which means that it is at 7 a.m. You've probably been up for a couple hours, right, Vic?
Yeah, I'm up. Thanks for having me, Joel. Good to see you, buddy.
See, I thought we were off to one of those rocky starts. There was a quick freeze for a minute, which you and I very well know, having done a podcast now for the better part of 5 months, that anything goes at this point. But I wanted to have Victor on because, we have a lot in common. One of which is not our baseball skills. Victor actually played professionally. I did not. But we both like to talk for a living. But really where I'm going with this is we're both storytellers. And Victor's family has this business, Big Fly Gear?
Big Fly Gear. Yeah.
Big Fly Gear. Right. Which has just and I'm wearing one of the hats right now. We matched up today, by the way.
We did. It's the marquee logo that we got going.
Yeah, I love this one. And so just some of the coolest stuff. If you think in Kansas City, what Charlie Hustle has been able to do, Big Fly Gear is taking these iconic names and putting them on shirts and hats and telling their story that way, in really unique ways. And so we got a family business and the world of baseball, which was turned upside down. So, and then this podcast that we had. But how are things going as we are so far into this now and the world continues to change?
From the business perspective, it's going all right. It's good that baseball is back. That obviously helps kind of generate the interest. The surprising thing about it is that we are slightly ahead of last year's revenues, which is a little mind-boggling. We going back to February, mid-February thereabouts, we had finally decided that we wanted to do our Mike Trout graphic, and it's called the Millville Meteor. And so we got approval from Trouty and his agent to put it out there, and we did. And all of a sudden, it's going crazy. We had to reorder, building this momentum. California had yet to go on spring break as the pandemic was starting to hit. So I'm thinking that with all of the sales that we had and all the shirts that we had put out, especially out towards the West Coast, that we're going to start to see some of those the next week as people go to Tempe, Arizona for spring training, and maybe they get on camera, and just building the momentum towards opening day. And then all of a sudden everything shut down on March 14th. And, we just figured that we had to continue to do it. For us, since we are a mom and pop shop that we run right out of the house, our inventory was our inventory. We didn't have any overhead other than the inventory that we currently had. So it's not as if we were going to have to sink in or lose money on overhead in a brick and mortar situation. And so we decided, well, let's just keep rolling. And we decided to roll out the George Brett Pine Tar graphic. So we added inventory, and now we've added the Abreu hammer, which is the Hank Greenberg tribute that just launched on a pre-sale standpoint 2 days ago. So it's going well. We're having fun. We're 16, 17 months into it, even though it feels like it's 5 years. But Kim, my wife, loves it. She works it. She's the one that really is responsible for it during the season because I'm out in California and we make our home in Texas.
Let's see if I can pop a couple of these up right now and show a little bit of. Here's the
advance to be able to do that.
No, it's debatable, really. Yeah. You know that, but here we go. The Millville Meteor.
Yeah, that's the Mike Trout.
Look at that guy. Look at that model.
I think the model's the one that sells the shirt. To be perfectly honest, it's not the graphic. So Mike Trout is from Millville, New Jersey. That nickname didn't really happen in high school. It kind of happened after the fact, kind of based off of. Mickey Mantle was known as the Commodore Comet, or the Commerce Comet, pardon me, out of Oklahoma, Commerce, Oklahoma. And so there's been so many comparisons to Mike Trout and Mickey Mantle. That's where the Millville Meteor came from. That 755 is obvious. Hank Aaron is one of my favorite all-time players. And I think the number itself just tells the story. So we don't have a license with Major League Baseball or the Players Association. What we decided that we wanted to do is, as far as this baseball apparel business was, we wanted to be able to tell stories of a person, place, and or moment in baseball history revolving around the home run. Big Fly is my home run call, has been for years. And so that's why we kept that home run theme. And so we create a one-of-a-kind graphic that tells the story. As you scroll there, that bells, that's our tribute to all women professional baseball players, softballers, going back to the women's professional leagues in the 40s and the 50s. There's right next to it, if you go back to the main screen, there's also our Hollywood ending shirt, which is the blue one there. That's Kirk Gibson, the 1988 home run he hit off of Dennis Eckersley. And to me, it's the artwork, right, that is the differentiator. Just go back to that real quick. I want to explain to you what we kind of do from an art perspective. Clearly, that's the makeshift Hollywood sign, right, in the Hollywood Hills that says Hollywood. But "She Is Gone" are the words that Vin Scully said as the ball drifted into the pavilion. Now, if you count all of the stars and the baseball, which represents the moon, there's 23 of them. Kirk Gibson wore number 23. The two red stars that you see right above or right where the ... is, if you watch the video replay of the home run on YouTube, as the ball is sailing into the stands, there's a view between the pavilion and the seats of the parking lot. And there's a car that all of a sudden slams on the brakes. And I could only imagine is that person was leaving thinking the Dodgers were losing and they're going home early, going to beat traffic. And they heard the radio call and slam on the brakes immediately. And so that's what those two stars represent. And so that's how we go about things. We try to come up with unique twists on those situations. The shot heard around the world, obviously, is 1951, Bobby Thompson against Ralph Branca, that propelled the Giants into the World Series. And so we kind of put our own little twist at it. That picture there of Tyler and I to the right, that's there on the plaza in Kansas City, by the way. Yeah.
There it is. Yes.
There it is. Tyler's not that short anymore, by the way.
No, he's not. So for those that don't know, and obviously I have a big audience here in Kansas City, I should go back because you mentioned these, and I think these have a lot to do with, and not that you wouldn't have told this story anyway. You're telling stories from the history of the game, but as a guy that grew up in Kansas City, and still comes back a lot, diehard Chiefs fan. And for those that don't know, I know I mentioned this on my LinkedIn promo this morning. Victor is the son of Royals Hall of Famer Cookie Rojas. So Victor went to Blue Valley High School here in Kansas City, and now makes his home with his family in Texas, splitting time in Los Angeles or the LA area with Angels. But here's the fresh pine tar, and this one, The thing I like about all these is that, and I'm not trying to sell for you, although I'm happy to, but there's if any of these stories connect with you, the emotion. Like when I see Kirk Gibson, I know exactly where I was when I watched that home run.
Me
I didn't have
too.
any ties to the game. I just know where I was.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember it being in the attic at my cousin's house in New Jersey with that, oh my God reaction. And you just remember where you were.
Yep.
It's just, they're such good gifts because they're fun and they evoke that kind of emotion. So, here in Kansas City, it's obviously been a lot of years. Everybody knows about the Pine Tar game, not just in Kansas City too. So you really capture that emotion, which I know is part of it.
Yeah, the whole idea for us is, kind of creating community in a sense, in that this unique artwork that tells a story, it connects you with a part of the game, the history of the game. And so the idea being, if you were to wear our shirt out because you like the look and the feel and you connect to that story somehow. I'm getting a lot of folks right now sending me messages that they're buying Hebrew Hammer shirts, which is the Hank Greenberg shirt, because their mom or their dad, that was their favorite player growing up. And that's cool to me. That gives me goosebumps thinking about how we're connecting, generations through our art. And so if you wear our shirt in public and someone sees the graphic and it stands out because you kind of have to decipher it a little bit or trying to figure out what it is. Now you as an individual wearing that product are sharing that story with that new potential customer or someone that you're teaching a little bit of the game of. And with Hank Greenberg, obviously just a great Jewish American icon who in 1934 sat out on Yom Kippur as the Tigers were pushing for the playoffs and took a lot of grief. People talk about Jackie Robinson and the grief that he sustained as the first black man to, really to integrate baseball. There might have been other minorities that played, but Jackie Robinson is that icon. That didn't happen until 1947. Hank Greenberg, as a Jew in this country, he a lot of interesting things from players, from the media, from baseball personnel, and so it was, and baseball players to that end. And so when he sat out in 1934, it kind of elevated his stature in the Jewish American community, especially in Detroit. It's just amazing to me how they're able to live through that. There's one last story on Hank Greenberg and Jackie Robinson. And this is the beauty of what we do because of the research and the like that we like to put into our products. 1947 was Hank Greenberg's last year. He was a Tiger throughout his entire career. He missed 3 full seasons, parts of 2 serving in the military. And then in 1947, the Pirates bought his contract after the Tigers let him go. Well, 1947 is when Jackie Robinson broke in. And there was a game, I believe it was in May in Pittsburgh, and there was a bunt situation. And as things unfolded, there was a collision between Hank Greenberg and Jackie Robinson near first base. Hank was a first baseman, a big first baseman too, 6'3", and Jackie wasn't a big guy. But everything was fine. And there's a conversation you could see, according to media reports, between Jackie and Hank Greenberg. And the conversation was one of those that was asked about after the game by both sides, by both media. And what Hank basically was telling Hank was telling Jackie was, don't let these guys rile you up. I've been called everything under the sun. Don't let them get under your skin. And I think there's a quote for Hank Greenberg in the post-game press conference that he says, the more they rile him up, the better he's going to be. And talking about Jackie Robinson. And we know how the history played out, a Hall of Fame player, humanitarian, just an icon in baseball. So those are the things that we seek out, unique little stories. Because, I mean, look, the way we look at it, home runs, they're a dime a dozen. But what makes them special? Where's the connectivity to the history of the game, to the history of our country? And that's kind of what we're hoping to do is kind of continue to build off of this. There's an infinite number of stories that we can tell. So it's not as if we're going to run out of topics. We may run out of space for inventory, but that would be a good problem to have.
Good storytelling never goes away.
Right.
To me, when it goes away, it means you need to ask more questions, you need to do more research, you need to poke around because they're all out there.
Right.
And I've never asked you this. I wonder if and when, it might be too self-serving. I don't know. I don't think it would be. When do we have some form of a cookie shirt? Because
I've been
I
asked
know
that before.
I'm sure you have. I don't know why it took me, this long, but seriously, if you think about it, is one of the great names in baseball history, right? I mean, no, your dad had the one name label,
Right.
you
Right.
know, Prince, Madonna, Cookie. No, I mean, I'm being a little bit silly, but like, I'm sure there were some kids that came up and said, Mr. Rojas, but I mean, he's known as Cookie, still is to
Right.
this day. And there's also the immigrant story, Cuban American, culture, all of that. I'm not trying to sell you on that, but he seems to fit the same mold as so many of these other stories, and
Yeah.
really with the point being that every one of these guys that played in some form or another have a story.
No, no doubt about it. And it's funny because there's so many things to unpack there. I've been asked about why I haven't done a shirt for Cookie. He had 54 career home runs. He did have a couple of inside the park home runs, so maybe we make an inside the park home run shirt for the little guys. Yeah, it's pretty cool that I could think about doing stuff like that. The idea being that, we're kind of home run related. I guess it's our company. We can kind of do whatever we want. We can go off the path if we want and do, it is my dad. We have used his image for some advertising, which is kind of cool. He's been great. I think one of our, I wish I would have sent it to you so I could show people, but over the holidays, there's a picture of him in his Phillies uniform, which obviously we tweaked and made it Big Flyer BF. But he's sitting in the dugout, and we put a Santa hat on him, and he loved it. He got a kick out of it. Cool thing about Dad, his name is Cookie, but that's just a nickname, and his nickname was Cookie, Cuqui, and his real name's Octavio. But when he came to the States and people asked him what his nickname, he would say Cookie in like, his Spanish accent, and it just automatically got translated to Cookie. Real name is Candida, so she does go by Candy. So we managed for Cookie and Candy for the longest time, and then us kids, we got nicknamed in Kansas City. I think it was Peanut, Lollipop, Cracker Jack, and M&M. There was 4. So that's the story behind our family's kind of unique name.
Yeah, that's fun. I was just thinking about it because besides the home run thing or lack thereof is that he, I would think among many, many, many others, represents that story of coming to the States and finding success in baseball, which we're still seeing. And I know the pride too. I mean, I think there was maybe 3 weeks ago where there was some kind of milestone or accomplishment in a game regarding Cuban-born players. It was a game that we had against the White Sox.
Yeah.
And I actually think the White Sox have arguably the most under the radar superstar in the game year after year in Jose Abreu. That's not because he's Cuban. It's because he's just an understated guy. You don't hear from him a whole lot. He hit 5 home runs over the weekend, and that's a team loaded with Cubans. We in Kansas City had the American League home run leader last year from Cuba, Jorge Soler. So I would think that these stories evolve, right? I mean, those guys that are coming over from Cuba now are doing so in different ways than what your dad experienced, but yet it's still really a unique story.
But yeah, there's no doubt. And when we started, like the whole Hank Greenberg thing, I thought about that as one of our original graphics to put out when we launched in February of 2019. But at the time, we had to kind of get to a point where what was manageable for us, especially since we were throwing darts in the dark. We had no idea what this was going to be like. And so we did something, to your point about Cubans and just even Latin Americans in general from a baseball perspective, because it's such a hotbed that it's one of those things that we decided to make a more generalized graphic. And then Soy Jonronero is our Latin player tribute to that. Soy Jonronero means I'm a home run hitter. And that's one of the originals. And really, as time has gone on and people see it, they appreciate it and understand and connect with it. We did one with the Japanese verbiage. We translated Big Fly in Japanese. So that represents, the Sadahara O's of the world, and Hideki Matsui's, Shohei Ohtani's coming over to the States and playing here, and giving love and passion to the Japanese culture and to their rich baseball history. But you're right. There's definitely a point to us getting more specific to, as it relates to me. You're right. I mean, there's no question I should do something more on the Cuban side. Last summer, we got to the point where we did the Negro Leagues tribute shirt called the Barnstorming Tee. And the one thing I love about that is being able to connect with Bob Kendrick at the Negro League Baseball Museum. And we really wanted to do something that, again, there's a story behind that. There's a 1936 Negro League National League team that barnstormed. It was a team that had 5 future Hall of Famers on it, including Cool Papa Bell and Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige. And they went off to this prestigious Denver tournament. They won the Denver tournament. And then that's the graphic that we created for it. And Bob Kendrick loved it so much that he wanted it in his store at the museum. And so that to me really got to that point where it validated what we were doing. And, you tiptoe around this. You start a business, you have a great idea, and everything is great in your head, right? And you think everything's going to be smooth sailing and so on and so forth. But you just never know what the audience is going to pick, especially from an apparel perspective. And once Bob kind of validated that for us with that graphic and bought an order and to put in his museum, that really said to us, all right, we're kind of onto something, and let's keep pushing the envelope and let's keep doing things that is unique. And that's what we're continuing to work on. We've had this Ernie Banks one that, it's just okay. And I'm not quite sold on it. It's easy to do Ernie Banks and say, oh, let's play 2, right? Because that's just Ernie Banks. We want something that's more unique to that. Stan, if I were to do a Stan Musial, I want it to be harmonica and the notes being the baseballs. And just because he loved music and he was a harmonica player, not many people in today's world know that about Stan Musial. You could look at the Hall of Fame plaque and say, oh, these are his numbers, but who was he? What was he? What did he stand for? And those are the things that we're always seeking out. And that's why sometimes it takes a little longer for us to put a graphic on it. We know what the story is for Mickey Mantle. We just haven't hit the nail on the head with the right look and feel of it. And it's going to be a cool story because it's a story that hasn't really been told a whole lot and people don't understand it. And it's a common phrase. And so that's what we're waiting for. It's this back and forth constantly between the designer and us to kind of come up with the right look.
My friend Kiana Sinks, I'm looking at her posts here, and I got to share them because there's a fun progression. First, she says, "Hey Victor, I heard Pops was cold-blooded."
Yeah,
and,
he was. He is. He's a bad man. 5'10", bad man.
And then, how did you feel watching the salute to the Negro Leagues last weekend? And we'll get to that in a second. Then she says, I have that tee, the Barnstorming t-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Kiana's a huge advocate for the museum. As a matter of fact, I was over there with her, maybe 6-7 weeks ago, awesome. Masks and all. And so, yeah, I'll ask you about that. How did you feel about the salute to the Negro Leagues last weekend? I know we certainly, we're here in Kansas City in the greatest spot because we feel like, we're surrounded by that history. And
it's yours. It's Kansas City. And in Kansas City, everybody wraps their arms around what's, it's their baby. You know what I mean? And that's why I think there's such a big connection between Kansas Cityans and the Negro League Museum.
Yeah. So for us, it's great. I mean, every time it's just like, hey, let's have Bob on. Of course, nowadays anybody could with how things are virtually. We're lucky enough that during a normal season, you could see Bob walking through the press box or down on the field on a somewhat regular basis when he's not traveling. And so we have access to who I believe is the greatest storyteller that I know. But what did you think last weekend? I think I was disappointed, to be perfectly honest with you, in the grand scheme of things. And granted, I know it's a 60-game schedule,
and things got condensed, and they fit in. They're fitting in the Jackie Robinson, they're fitting in the Roberto Clemente Day, and they fit in the Negro Leagues tribute. This being the centennial of the Negro Leagues and something that had been planned for a while. I wish they would have done more. Meaning, I think maybe you had enough time to have every team wear some sort of a Negro League uniform in some fashion. And there's plenty of them there would have been plenty to cover the 30 teams. There's no doubt about that. Because if you just dig into the history, even just the rarest of teams could have been represented, not just the ones that we know, the Cuban ex-Giants and the Monarchs and so on and so forth. So from that standpoint, I wish they would have done more than just a patch. Without fans in attendance, and especially Kansas City would have been unbelievable with the old dress to the nines. That would have been tremendous. But that's something also that could have been done somehow, of getting fans virtually connected to a dress to the nines at home. Get dressed up, represent, and kind of promote that standpoint. So I'm glad they did something to it. I did like that they had the cardboard cutouts. We had 6 of them in the front row, right behind the Angels dugout. And so while we did show it as a group shot and explain what it is with the Negro Leagues tribute and the centennial and everything, what I wanted to do was each couple of innings, focus in on one. Being the storyteller that I am, focus in on each individual that was there and tell stories. We had Cool Papa Bell was one of them, and so told the story. Bob Kendrick. I've heard all the stories from Bob. Telling the stories, how fast he was, and so on and so. So those are the things that I wish we could do more of, and people could be more aware of. But overall, I'm glad Major League Baseball did something. Maybe it's the first step. Maybe it's a precursor to something that it grows and gets a little bit larger in years to come. And because I think fans like that. I think when you change it up, especially in today's world of the quick satisfying mentality that we all seem to have in today's world, I think if you just switch it up and all of a sudden you have a different look or a different feel and an understanding, an underlying message behind it, I think you can connect even 3 hours or 3.5 hours, whatever it may be. I think you're teaching. I think you have the ability to do that. And I think that's where I wish we would kind of grow the game a little bit more so and more organically in that regard.
I want to wind down a little bit with just more about this pandemic, but as I see this last comment from Kiana, I think it can relate to both of you and I. Could have been bigger. I think the Negro Leagues has sparked a greater conversation in the baseball world, getting more black boys in the league. I loved your podcast with you, Joel, Dave Sims, and Bob chatting about that. That needs to be recorded in person. That was, to me, one of my favorite conversations that we had, and a very deep one, because we talked very heavily about racial injustice. I will forever in my mind remember hearing Dave Sims, who is the only black play-by-play announcer in baseball. Is that right, Victor? Or TV?
On television. You have Robert Ford, who does radio for the Astros.
Robert Ford's on radio, my good friend on radio. And I believe that you are the only Latin American TV play-by-play man.
I'm the only Hispanic English language play-by-play in Major League Baseball. And Buck Martinez also does. Joe Angel used to do radio for the Baltimore Orioles, but he's no longer doing it. So, we had a deep discussion about that. I'll forever remember telling a story about getting pulled over by the cops and at gunpoint a couple of years ago. It ultimately ended up being a big misunderstanding. And Dave Sims, who is a veteran broadcaster, been at it many, many years in many sports. His question to me was it light out or dark out? And I just, that one stuck with me. And for Dave to tell us that day that no one had ever had this discussion, he had never been asked to have this discussion about race. And he's been broadcasting, 40-something years or whatever it was, or certainly going back to his days as a writer in Philadelphia. And so my question to you is, what have you taken in terms of opportunity from this pandemic? Certainly you and I mean, obviously, other than the very clear honor of you getting to work with me on a very regular. But, there are a lot of things that came of this pandemic that wouldn't have happened, that we, discussions, partnerships, business endeavors. So we're not done with the pandemic yet, but to this point, what's your takeaway? I think from a personal standpoint, I've opened myself up to new ideas, and I've always had kind of that entrepreneurial spirit, and my wheels have always churned. But it's always been kind of in this lane of, I'm not worried about what's going on out there. I got to focus on the here and now and what I'm doing. And I think what the pandemic has forced me to do is connect even more so with those beyond my lanes. And whether it's fans, whether it's family, whether it's just, I don't know, just my dad has always been one of those individuals that says good morning to everybody. He could walk into an elevator, not know anybody, just says good morning. And he gets pissed when they don't say good morning back. And he'll literally turn around and say, I said good morning, because that's just the type of person that he is. I've become that individual. I have trust issues. I've always had them. I have a close inner circle. That inner circle has gotten so much wider over the last 5 months. And I don't know if it's because you start thinking about, I'm 52, as I'm on the back nine, if you will, of life. And I'm not there yet thinking that way from mortality, but I'm just, I should be more open and more receptive to just saying hello and just more welcoming. And not that I've ever been, a stiff arm person, but I'm not a big limelight person. I grew up with a famous dad, at least in Kansas City. And, I understand where the privacy comes from, where he wishes that he had a little more privacy. I get it. And so I've never been one to seek out the limelight. I've always kind of liked my bubble. I want to do my thing. I want to get out. Mark Goobies is great because he loves that stuff. So it's easy for me to just punt and let him do it. And it's like, cool. I'm just the guy over here, which is how I like it. Over the last 5 months, though, I've seen myself get out of that. Not seeking the limelight, but not being afraid to put myself out there a little bit more so, whether it's being vocal on Twitter on certain issues, whether it's I'm doing a YouTube show with my family now, which is something I never would have thought of in years past. I used to be very protective of my family, not even uttering names of my kids, just because I that's kind of how I grew up. And I've become more open to doing that stuff. I want people to see, honestly, I want people to see how lucky I am, how regardless of difficult situations, how much in love I am with the wife and how much I love my family and being around my kids and enjoying every single moment. It could come from the fact that I did come from a divorce, I divorced early on, and my daughter's 29, and she grew up in California and I was elsewhere. So I'm really focused on, our household because of that. But whatever it is, I think the pandemic has really just opened my eyes a little bit more so to not being afraid and just being myself. And I've always been, me, Joel, there's no real gray areas with me. It's fairly black and white. But you know what? I'm starting to see the gray areas. I'm starting to be a little bit more understanding. And as opposed to just being, no, this is my mindset and this is how I'm going to stick to it. I'm more welcoming to ideas and suggestions and conversations than I ever have been.
Well, I think that the pandemic forced all of us to reevaluate, especially so many of us that thought, I don't know about you. I don't know that you and I have talked about this, but from a baseball standpoint, and you do every game that's televised. I do every game that's televised. And I just always felt like as long as I was healthy, I was in control of my calendar, my schedule. Yeah. Until and unless the bosses say they want someone else, and they hadn't done that for 12 years, and same company the previous 3 before that when I came from St. Louis. So for 15 years, no one ever messed with me in a profession where they can mess with you a lot,
Right.
and so I just always felt like if I'm healthy or I'm close to healthy, I'm willing to work hurt. I'm willing to come in when I'm not feeling all that up to it or as energetic or a little bit under the weather. Hey, I've missed one day in 12 years
Yeah.
for a funeral, and that was it. And so I always felt like, yeah, there's the chance that if I got sick, I might miss a couple of weeks. And, I always feared that one. I didn't fear 4 months out of
Right.
work. And so suddenly this was all out of our control. I mean, you and I both knew, and so many others, that of all the things that we can control to do it, we hear it all the time in sports, control the controllable. we couldn't control this one. So
Yeah.
we started going out there and putting ourselves out there. That's how you and I ended up at one point doing were we doing 5 shows a week?
We were doing, well, I think the first week we were doing every day. I think we took Sunday off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then we just kind of found a groove, and right now it's once a week, and and it was like, what are we supposed to do, what are we not supposed to do? And it's like, you got to just throw yourself out there
Yeah.
and try it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
here's, and I've said this to you before, I mean, I remember being on vacation and you texted me, and it's not like we were, nowadays we might text each other every day or every other day, or be on a phone call and just BSing, and it might not even be about our show. But it was an every now and then, maybe every few months, touch base on something. And suddenly this pandemic brings you and I together. And I think that's a little bit of what you're talking about too, is something, just throw yourself into things
Yeah.
and see what comes of it.
Just on the heels of that, it really, I think what happened is that we were all in the same boat. And all of a sudden that boat capsized and it became a sink or swim situation. And I think, for me, I realized I've always known deep down that I had survival skills. I'm not afraid of failure. I mean, I think that's how you ultimately achieve success, is by a host of failures. That's because that's how you get better. And that's how you learn. And so I think because we were all in the same boat and we were all looking at each other going, oh, here goes the boat. It turns over. And like, we're all in this situation of, we don't know what's going on. Is it Armageddon? Yeah, that's what it felt like, because everything stopped for everybody for the most part. And I think that's where I think that's where my mindset is of, I'm more connected with different types of people that weren't in my life because of that, because now we relate. We were both in this situation, regardless of what your means are. We were both in this situation. Everything kind of shut down. And I think that's why I focus so much on, doing as much as possible, trying to help out as much as possible if I can. It's difficult sometimes, being able to parcel out your time to do that. But I think you just, I don't know. I'm strange in that regard. I just feel like, and that's, I think it's a chip off the old block. I think with each passing day, I become my dad, because I saw it was, and I'm thankful that it opened my eyes to, I guess, a whole new world, if you will, or at least a new view of it, going forward.
I couldn't agree more. And I have said over and over again, with all of this mess, full well understanding, by the way, that we are lucky. I'll speak for you and for me and our families to have been healthy,
Yep.
and to have not had loved ones who have had to fight for their lives because of this awful virus. So it hit our, it hit our incomes. It hit our families that way, and certainly the emotional. I mean, we both have teenagers. We each have 2 teenagers that are the same age, and they don't know each other, but I know what you're going through and vice versa. Last thing, you mentioned the family show. I would highly recommend that everybody get on YouTube and check that out. And obviously we've talked about the business. I'm just curious, as an entrepreneur, one who's worn many hats for many years. I mean, you have always been much more than an announcer. And you're a minor league GM. You've been on the marketing side of things. You've done so much. But how does the joy of running a family business, and let's be honest here, Kim gets a good chunk of the credit, your wife, that,
Mm-hmm.
but you're the one that's out there. How does that compare to the excitement of calling a Major League Baseball game, which I know for you, just like me, is it's a privilege, but it's every day. We've done that for a lot of years. This
Right.
is something much newer, but yet you have this ability to connect with a fan base on both sides that you may not know them face to face, but you're a part of their life and vice versa. So how are the similarities and differences in terms of being an announcer and being the entrepreneur of an apparel company?
Yeah, I think it's unique. Like you said, we get a chance to connect with kind of the same demographic, same group. Obviously, in Southern California, I'm connected more directly to Angel fans, and as our brand builds from a nationwide perspective. I obviously have a lot of friends in Kansas City. But when you look at the map of sales, man, we've sold to Canada, we've sold to Ireland, we've sold to Japan, Mexico, all across the country. And, there's a good chunk of Angel fans throughout. And so that helps from that perspective. But I think it's unique. The baseball side of things, for me, it's like putting my shoes on a daily basis. I've been doing it. I'm 52. I've been in the game for 52 years. I mean, I grew up in the game. The beauty of what we do is that you never know what's going to unfold on a daily basis in baseball. Whereas an apparel business, or at least what we're doing anyway, it seems like, there's an A to B to C process to everything. And it kind of just runs itself. There's the marketing side of things and trying new things, but it's not one of those things that you can just kind of roll out of bed and just keep trying. I will say this. I have taken the best part about it for me has been calling people from the business perspective, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, it's my business or whatever, but somebody else is running it. Somebody's running the website. Somebody's doing the marketing. Somebody's handling the emails, the customer service, the returns on. We're literally doing it all. That's us. I handle all the social media stuff. I'm the one that handles the website. I'm the one that uploads the pictures. I'm the one that takes the pictures, or I'm modeling stuff. That is, when we say we're a mom and pop shop, we are. But I love picking up the phone. I had to do it yesterday because there was a customer that hadn't received their order from August the 10th, which to me was mind-boggling to me because we haven't had any issues with the post office whatsoever. And so I pick up the phone and I call the person, and hey, it's Victor Rojas with Big Flag. And the response is great because it's like, I had one person. So I know I'm jumping around, but last year at Christmas time, I wanted to call, because it was our first year. I called the list of all the people that bought last year. I tried to call as many as possible, but I think we had over 1,000 orders. So it was impossible to get through all of them. But from the first order on down, if I didn't know them, obviously not family members, but I called them individually just to say, hey, it's Victor Rojas. I just want to say thank you for your commitment to buying stuff with us and supporting us and stuff like that. I had one phone, and she would not stop saying, shut up. There's no way. It's obviously she's an Angel fan. Shut up. This isn't Victor. Say something like you would be broadcasting. I'm like I'm not broadcasting. I'm just saying thanks for buying some Big Flag gear. So those are the fun things. Because like I said, I don't look at myself as, I'm just a dude, man. It just happens to have someone, dad who played baseball. I don't look at it like I'm this famous guy and I'm not calling anybody. No, I'm literally just a guy that has a lot of ideas, has some energy, wants to do things, wants to create things, wants to make things better. And that's kind of how I approach it. And, let the chips fall where they may.
I think people often expect us to be something that we're not, and which is, fake, phony. If you're on TV, you must not be real. And there's plenty of that out there too. But I think then when they say, hey, wait, he is just a dude, just a normal guy, it's, I see that all the time. And it's very, to me, rewarding when people start to view you just as the dude. Hey, I live in a neighborhood here in Kansas City. I have neighbors like everybody else. I go to the grocery store like everybody else and all that. And so, but we come into people's lives every single night, into their living rooms, their family rooms every single night, or every now and then someone will say, you come into my bedroom every single night. I'm like, it's probably a little too much, but thank you for that. But that is a privilege. And so I get it. And then to you, hey, I'm just making a phone call, trying to do something nice. And to them, it's like, oh my God, Victor Rojas is calling me. So, look, we sometimes, it's not that we forget it, but you gotta think about how that other the last person they're expecting on the phone is their favorite baseball announcer. And suddenly they're getting that. And that adds to the whole personal aspect of the business too. So, all right. So people can, certainly get those orders in. There's so much cool stuff. I just ordered my Hank Greenberg t-shirt, bigflygear.com. They can go to YouTube and check out what's the I'm subscribed, but that
Rojas
means that
Family Chronicles.
Rojas Family Chronicles. I'm subscribed, so I don't have to think about it. It just pops into my feed, which is good. That's a lot of fun. Your family's crushing it on that. All four of you guys are. And then the Big Fly Baseball Show is for the most part Mondays.
Yep.
I think we're doing Tuesday next week to try to
the trade deadline. Yeah.
wait till after the trade deadline. All right, I would tell you to go back to bed, but I know that you'll be up and having another
I'm gonna
cup
go
of
for a
coffee or
run.
whatever it is. You're going for
I'm
a
gonna be
run.
at the ballpark in a couple of hours. Got a doubleheader today.
Doubleheader today. You have to be at your ballpark, but
Yes.
where's the game?
In Houston, they canceled Thursday's game with the hurricane that's tracking towards Louisiana and Texas. So they moved Thursday's game to today for a doubleheader, and then tomorrow night's game was supposed to be a night game. It's now a day game, which is a 10 a.m. start for us.
So you have
strawberries and cream with Victor and Gooby at 10 a.m.
Yes,
it's like Wimbledon.
Yes, you have a minimum of 23 innings. Is that right? Yeah, minimum of 23 innings, which sounds like a lot, but it's easier than 27 innings. The 7-inning doubleheaders actually work out real nicely. I think.
I like them.
It's been a lot of fun. So, all right,
Sure.
bigflygear.com. Check them out. Victor, I will let you go. You're a better man than me going and getting that run in. I have 2 good calls today, and I'd say it's great to see you, but I mean, I saw you yesterday. So
Exactly. So it's
my
pleasure, buddy. Great talking with you as always.
Thanks, Victor. Okay. Great to visit with Victor Rojas, the play-by-play voice of the Los Angeles Angels, bigflygear.com. My name is Joel Goldberg, and thanks to Kansas City Audio Visual for helping me out with this studio here. See this little, we're working on a little something else here, trying to expand the studio. So it's a work in progress, really cool stuff. Check them out. And if you have any needs, definitely get a hold of them, kcav.com. And my partner and great sponsor, Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. They have been with me pretty much every step of the way since March. So a huge thanks to them and to you. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday, everyone. And thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust.